When people hear the phrase quantum entanglement, most imagine something mystical, almost magical. They picture two particles light years apart, instantly talking to each other, sending secret messages across the universe faster than light. It sounds like science fiction, or maybe even proof that thoughts and reality are connected. And that's where most of us get it wrong. We've taken one of the most beautiful discoveries in modern physics and turned it into a metaphor that misses the real miracle. This isn't just about particles. It's about how we understand connection itself and how our mind has been using the idea of entanglement in the wrong way. So before we can talk about the conscious connection method, we have to strip away the illusions that surround quantum entanglement. Because once you see what it truly is, you'll realize it's pointing towards something far more profound than instant communication. It's pointing to the very structure of reality and awareness itself. Let's start at the beginning. Entanglement happens when two particles are created together or interact in such a way that their properties become linked. You can't fully describe one without describing the other. If you measure one, the other's state is instantly determined. It's like they're two notes of the same chord, separate sounds, but part of a single harmony. Now here's the tricky part. People often imagine one particle sending information to the other when it's measured. That's the famous spooky action at a distance that even Einstein struggled with. But in truth, no message is being sent at all. The two particles aren't communicating. They're simply one system. They were born connected, and that connection never broke. It only looks like communication when we insist on seeing them as two separate things. And that's the first mistake we make. We think entanglement is about transferring information, when it's really about revealing unity. The universe isn't made of independent pieces that talk to each other across space. It's a single unfolding field, and entanglement is a glimpse of that wholeness showing through the cracks of our limited perception. But over time, we've turned that insight into something it isn't. In pop culture, entanglement became a symbol for psychic powers, manifestation tricks, or secret cosmic hacks. People started saying things like, "We're all entangled, so if I think of you, you'll feel it," or quantum. Physics proves thoughts create reality. The intention behind those ideas is often good, a desire to find connection and meaning in a vast universe. But the interpretation goes too far. It mixes metaphor with mechanics. It takes something deeply mysterious and makes it sound like a self-help shortcut. And that misunderstanding doesn't just blur the science. It limits the spiritual truth too. Because if you think entanglement is about one thing controlling another, you're still trapped in separation. You're still imagining two different points connected by an invisible thread. But entanglement isn't about connection across distance. It's about the absence of distance in the first place. It's not me and you connected. There is no real me and you, just one system showing up as two. This shift in understanding changes everything. When we stop trying to use entanglement as proof for supernatural communication, we start to see what it's really teaching. That the fundamental nature of existence is relationship. Nothing exists by itself. Every particle, every atom, every organism, all arise together, not as isolated objects, but as patterns within one universal field. Think about this carefully. If two entangled particles behave as one, even when they appear to be separated by miles, what does that say about the universe itself? It says that the boundaries we draw between objects, between space, even between minds, are conceptual. They're not ultimately real. The quantum world doesn't obey the story of separation that our senses tell us. It behaves as if everything is part of one inseparable whole. That idea may sound philosophical, but it's deeply scientific. Experiments have tested entanglement over and over again, closing loopholes, ruling out hidden variables. And every time, the result is the same. The universe behaves as if it's fundamentally connected. Not through signals or secret channels, but through shared being. Entanglement is the evidence that wholeness is built into the structure of reality. And yet, even as science reveals this unity, our language keeps dividing it. We talk about observers and observed, subjects and objects, inner and outer worlds. We build our lives around the illusion that we are separate minds looking out at a physical universe. But the truth that entanglement hints at, and that consciousness later confirms, is that there is no true boundary between observer and observed. The act of seeing and what is seen are part of one continuous process. This is why we say people are using quantum entanglement. Wrong. It's not because they're asking spiritual questions. Those questions are valid and vital. It's because they're looking for proof of control, when entanglement is actually showing us the end of control. It's revealing that there never was a separate controller in the first place. Once you see this, the phrase spooky action at a distance becomes unnecessary. There's no action and no distance. There's just one unified event that appears as two correlated outcomes, depending on where you look. That's not magic. It's the deep order behind everything. And here's where the conscious connection begins. When we truly grasp that entanglement is not about exchange, but about unity, we start to sense a parallel inside ourselves. Our thoughts, emotions, and perceptions aren't isolated events. They're entangled expressions of a single awareness. The same way two particles can't be described independently, our inner and outer worlds can't be separated either. They arise together in the same field of consciousness. This realization doesn't come from belief. It comes from perception. The more you observe how everything interconnects, the more the illusion of separation begins to dissolve. You start noticing that the line between you and the world is thinner than it seems. And when that line fades, something profound happens. You begin to experience connection, not as a theory, but as a living reality. That's the doorway entanglement opens when understood correctly. It's not about quantum mechanics proving spirituality. It's about science quietly hinting at what mystics have been saying for centuries, that existence is one, expressing itself through countless forms. So the next time someone says, "We're all entangled," remember what that really means. It doesn't mean thoughts can jump across space or that energy waves carry feelings. It means the very fabric of existence is relational. It means there are no true separations to begin with, only patterns appearing within a single unified field. This is where the conscious connection method begins. Because before you can experience deep awareness or transformation, you have to understand what connection actually is. You have to see that connection isn't something you create. It's something you remember. It's already here, woven into the structure of the universe and reflected in every moment of your awareness. Quantum entanglement isn't proof that consciousness controls the world. It's proof that consciousness is the world, that every observation, every experience, every thought arises within one seamless reality. And that's the real secret most people miss. We've been using quantum entanglement as a symbol for communication when it's actually a revelation of communion. Not sending signals across the void, but realizing there was never a void at all. Once you see that clearly, everything begins to change. How you think, how you relate, how you perceive. You stop trying to manipulate connection and start living from it. That's the first step toward the conscious connection method. Not reaching for unity, but awakening to the unity that was always there. Because the truth is, quantum entanglement isn't spooky at all. It's simply the universe reminding us that we were never separate to begin with. Now that we've peeled away the myths, let's look deeper at what entanglement actually is and what it's trying to show us about the nature of connection. Because the truth is, entanglement isn't some rare or exotic event. It's built into the very way the universe behaves. It's not a trick of measurement. It's a clue to the deeper architecture of reality. And that architecture seems to whisper one clear message. Everything exists together. When two particles become entangled, they form a shared state. That means their physical descriptions stop being independent. We can't say particle A has one property and particle B has another. We can only describe them as a single combined system. No matter how far apart they drift, that shared description remains true. If we measure one, the results for the other are immediately known, not because information flies between them, but because they were never truly separate to begin with. This is where the human mind struggles. We've been trained to think of the universe as a giant machine made of separate parts, interacting through cause and effect. One thing bumps into another, energy travels from here to there, forces act and results follow. That picture works well for most of daily life. But at the quantum level, that story begins to fall apart. The universe stops behaving like a collection of independent pieces and starts acting like one vast, coordinated pattern. Entanglement is the clearest expression of that pattern. It tells us that separation is not fundamental, connection is. Space and distance may appear to divide things, but those divisions are secondary. Beneath them lies a single field of relationships. In that field, the parts don't just interact. They arise together. They define each other. That's why entanglement defies our normal logic. We're used to thinking that one thing has to cause another. But in entanglement, cause and effect blur. The two outcomes happen as one event, two sides of the same coin. When we observe them, it looks like coordination across space, but what's really happening is coordination within unity. It's like seeing the left and right hands of the same body move together. The experiments confirm this again and again. No matter how cleverly scientists test it, the universe refuses to behave like a system of separate objects. It behaves like one seamless whole that only appears divided when we look at it from within. That's not a belief or philosophy. It's the most precise data we have, and yet we keep asking the wrong question. We ask, how do the particles talk to each other? But the right question is, why did we assume they were separate in the first place? The mystery dissolves when we realize they were never communicating. They were always one. This realization carries a quiet revolution in how we see everything. It means the universe isn't built from independent building blocks, but from relationships. Each element gains its meaning only through the whole. The cosmos isn't a machine. It's a web, not a collection of objects, but a network of interactions. Every node depends on every other, and if that's true at the smallest scales, then connection isn't something added to the universe. It's its starting point. The illusion of separateness emerges later as a side effect of how we perceive. We slice reality into pieces so we can navigate it, but the slices are never the full picture. Entanglement is the universe's way of reminding us that the divisions are conceptual, not actual. This is the science of connection, the discovery that the fabric of existence is woven from correlation, not isolation. Even the equations that describe quantum systems don't speak of separate parts. They describe probabilities that belong to an undivided whole. The moment you measure one part, you define the entire pattern. If we take this seriously, it shifts our understanding of matter, energy, and even consciousness. Because if everything arises from relationship, then awareness itself may not be an isolated process inside a brain. It may be another form of entanglement within the universal field. Consciousness could be the living expression of the same unity that physics reveals at the quantum level. But before we rush into that idea, we have to appreciate what the science is already showing, that entanglement isn't an exception, it's the rule. It's not just about pairs of particles. Entire systems can be entangled. Even large collections of atoms, molecules, and light fields can share quantum states. Some researchers have even entangled tiny diamonds, vibrating as one coherent system. The implication is staggering. The more we look, the more we find that reality doesn't split neatly into this and that. It behaves like one integrated organism. Think about how that challenges our everyday thinking. We often say, my body, my thoughts, my world, as if there are clear boundaries between them. But at the quantum level, boundaries dissolve. The same principles that keep entangled particles in step could, in principle, underlie every relationship we experience, from the structure of atoms to the emergence of consciousness. The universe may be less like a set of objects and more like a single movement expressing itself in countless ways. And this brings us closer to the idea of conscious connection. Because what physics reveals externally mirrors what awareness reveals internally. When you observe the world closely, you notice that everything arises in relation. Every perception depends on contrast, every experience on context. There is no sound without silence, no form without space, no self without other. The same interdependence that entanglement shows in the lab is reflected in the fabric of our experience. This understanding dissolves one of humanity's oldest illusions, the belief that we are observers, standing apart from the universe. Entanglement says otherwise. It tells us the observer and the observed are part of the same unfolding process. We are not watching the universe from the outside. We are expressions of it, entangled within it, participating in it at every moment. This is what makes entanglement more than a scientific curiosity. It's a doorway to seeing ourselves differently. Once you realize the universe is relational at its core, you can no longer see life as a competition of separate forces. You begin to feel that every event, every interaction, every heartbeat is part of one continuous dance. And that awareness naturally leads toward compassion, empathy, and a sense of belonging, not because of belief, but because that's how the universe actually functions. So when we talk about the science of connection, we're really talking about a shift in worldview, from parts to patterns, from isolation to interaction, from the idea of independent entities to the recognition of inseparable relationships. Entanglement is the physical fingerprint of that unity. It shows us that the boundaries we hold sacred between you and me, between mind and matter, are flexible, even illusory. And here's the crucial takeaway. Entanglement doesn't tell us how to control the universe. It tells us how to belong to it. It's not an instruction to manipulate. It's an invitation to understand. When we truly see that everything is connected at its root, the question becomes not, what can I get from this connection? But how can I align with it? This realization is the foundation for what comes next. Because once we grasp that the universe is a web of relationships, that everything participates in everything, we can begin to ask a deeper question. What role does consciousness play in this interconnected field? If matter and energy are already entangled, could awareness itself be part of that same seamless pattern? Could consciousness be the ultimate field in which all these connections occur? That's where we're heading next. We've moved from myth to science, from misunderstanding to understanding. Now it's time to step beyond physics and explore how this same principle of connection appears within us. Because the next layer of entanglement isn't out there in space. It's right here in awareness itself. Up to this point, we've looked at quantum entanglement as a scientific phenomenon, a window into how deeply everything in the universe is connected. But there's a deeper question that naturally arises when you follow this trail far enough. If everything is connected in the physical world, could that same principle apply to awareness itself? Could consciousness, the very thing that's perceiving all of this, be part of the same unified field? This question has fascinated scientists and philosophers for more than a century. Because even after all our technological advances, there's still one mystery science can't explain: consciousness itself. We can map the brain, record neural activity, even track the firing of individual neurons, but we still don't know how experience, the feeling of being aware, emerges from physical matter. That gap is often called the hard problem of consciousness. And it's not just a gap, it's a doorway. What if awareness isn't something produced by matter at all? What if it's the underlying field in which matter appears? Quantum physics already tells us that particles don't have definite properties until they're observed. Their behavior is described by probabilities, not certainties. The act of observation doesn't just reveal what's there, it participates in bringing it into form. Now, that doesn't mean consciousness creates reality in a magical way. It means that observation is part of the process by which potential becomes actual. The universe isn't a fixed machine ticking away on its own. It's a participatory system, one where awareness plays an active role in shaping how reality unfolds. At this point, science and philosophy begin to meet. The same mystery that makes quantum entanglement possible, the inseparability of things, also appears in the relationship between the observer and the observed. You can't have one without the other. Every act of measurement includes both, the system being observed and the awareness doing the observing. They are entangled in a way that transcends space and time. This is where we begin to sense that consciousness might not be an isolated phenomenon. It's not something happening inside us, separate from the world. It might be the very ground from which both inside and outside arise. When you look deeply, the distinction between what you perceive and the one who perceives starts to dissolve. There's just one seamless field of experience, awareness itself, expressing as both subject and object. This idea might sound abstract, but it's actually a direct reflection of what quantum physics shows us. Just as two particles lose their independent identity when they become entangled, the observer and the observed lose their separation in the act of perception. Reality is not a collection of isolated things being watched from a distance. It's an unfolding event in which consciousness and matter are intertwined. The observer effect, one of the most discussed concepts in quantum theory, is often misunderstood. As thoughts create reality, that's not what it means. What it really shows is that the observer cannot be removed from the process of observation. Measurement changes what's measured because the act of observing is part of the same system. That's not mysticism. It's physics acknowledging participation. And if observation is participation, then consciousness isn't standing outside the universe looking in. It's woven into the universe itself. It's not something added later by evolution. It's an intrinsic property of existence. The universe knows itself through consciousness, the same way a wave knows itself through the motion of the ocean. When you start to see it this way, the boundaries between physics and awareness blur. The quantum field and the field of consciousness may be two ways of describing the same underlying reality, one from the outside, one from within. Science maps the patterns of energy and information. Awareness experiences them directly. Both are describing the same dance, viewed from different sides of the mirror. This is why so many great thinkers have hinted at the same insight in different languages. Schrödinger said, "The total number of minds in the universe is one." Bohr spoke of complementarity, that you can't separate the observer from the observed. And later, physicists like Wigner openly wondered whether consciousness might be the missing element in our understanding of quantum phenomena. These weren't mystical statements. They were reflections on the unavoidable role of awareness in the unfolding of reality. When we look closely, we realize that the link between consciousness and quantum physics isn't about using science to prove spirituality. It's about recognizing that both are pointing toward the same truth. Everything arises together. Consciousness is not a separate observer of the universe. It's the universe observing itself, the wave looking at the ocean. This recognition has profound implications for how we live and perceive. If consciousness is entangled with everything it observes, then our experience of the world is not a passive reflection. It's an active relationship. Every moment of awareness shapes and is shaped by what it perceives. We're not outsiders in a mechanical cosmos. We're participants in a living field of intelligence, and that changes the meaning of connection entirely. It's not just about atoms linking or signals passing between minds. It's about the realization that there was never any disconnection to begin with. The separateness we feel is a function of perception, not a property of reality. When you wake up to that, consciousness itself becomes the bridge, the silent link that unites everything in experience. This also explains why genuine insight, empathy, and intuition feel so natural. They're not supernatural abilities. They're what happens when consciousness remembers its own wholeness. When awareness stops identifying as a fragment and starts recognizing itself as the field, connection isn't something you have to create. It's simply what you are. The more we understand this, the clearer it becomes that the true purpose of exploring entanglement is not to control it, but to align with it. When you recognize consciousness as part of the same universal process that governs particles, a new kind of understanding emerges, one that's both scientific and spiritual, logical and experiential. It's the realization that the universe is aware through us, not apart from us. So when we say consciousness enters the equation, we're not just adding awareness to physics, we're dissolving the line between them. We're acknowledging that every act of observation, every thought, every perception is another way the universe comes to know itself. And that brings us to the next step: how to use this understanding, not as a theory, but as a living practice. Because knowing that everything is connected is one thing, experiencing that connection directly is another. The conscious connection method is about moving from concept to embodiment, from understanding unity intellectually to living it experientially. It's the art of aligning perception with the truth of interconnectedness. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to do that. How to move from knowing about connection to feeling it, not as an idea, but as a living reality in your awareness. Because that's where science becomes spirituality, and where understanding becomes transformation. Up to now, we've explored how quantum entanglement reveals a universe built on connection, and how consciousness itself may be part of that same seamless field. But understanding it intellectually is only the beginning. Real transformation happens when this understanding becomes an experience, when you begin to feel that unity directly in your awareness. That's where the conscious connection method begins. This isn't a technique for controlling the universe or forcing outcomes. It's not about manifesting or manipulating reality. It's about tuning your perception to what's already true, that separation is an illusion, and that consciousness is the medium through which all things are connected. The method is simple, but its effect can be profound. It moves in 3 natural stages: perception, presence, and participation. Let's begin with perception. Perception is about seeing through the illusion of separation. Most of us live inside a mental framework that constantly divides: me versus you, mind versus matter, inner versus outer. It's how the brain organizes reality, through contrast. But this division is a construct, not the truth. In perception, the first step is simply to notice how this division operates. You start to observe the way your thoughts draw lines around everything. This is me, that's the world. This is my idea, that's someone else's. The more closely you watch, the more you realize how artificial those lines are. They exist in language, not in reality. Reality itself doesn't have edges. It's continuous. The same awareness that perceives a thought also perceives a sound, a sensation, or a feeling. All of it appears in one unbroken field, so perception begins by relaxing the habit of labeling. When you stop dividing experience into parts, the sense of wholeness begins to reveal itself naturally. You're not forcing anything. You're simply letting the mind quiet down enough to notice what's always been there. It's like realizing the ocean was never separate from its waves. From there, we move into presence. Presence is the living experience of that wholeness. It's what happens when you stop trying to analyze reality and start being it. Presence is pure awareness, without commentary or judgment. It's consciousness resting in itself, open and undivided. In this state, you begin to notice that awareness doesn't belong to anyone. It's not your consciousness observing the world. It's consciousness itself, looking through countless eyes. You are not a separate observer inside a body. You are the field of awareness in which the body, the mind, and the world all appear. When presence deepens, time softens. The constant pull of past and future loosens its grip. You begin to experience life not as a sequence of events, but as a continuous, unfolding moment. In this stillness, the noise of thought fades, and what remains is direct, intimate connection with everything that is. There's no need to reach for unity. It's already here, revealed in silence. Presence is where the conscious connection becomes experiential. It's not a belief or a concept anymore. It's something you feel in the space between thoughts, in the rhythm of breath, in the way awareness effortlessly includes everything without preference. But presence isn't the end. The final stage is participation. Participation is the embodiment of unity in action. It's how consciousness expresses its interconnected nature through daily life. Once you've seen that there is no separation between yourself and the world, everything you do becomes part of the same living field. Every thought, word, and gesture ripples through the web of existence. Participation isn't about control. It's about alignment. When you act from awareness of connection, your actions naturally serve the whole. You stop asking, "What do I get?" and start asking, "What does the field need through me?" Decisions become clearer, creativity flows more easily, and relationships shift from competition to cooperation. This is the practical essence of the conscious connection method, living as an expression of the field, not as a fragment trying to survive within it. It's the end of isolation and the beginning of participation. You are no longer an observer looking at life. You are life observing itself. To practice this in simple terms, begin by pausing often throughout the day. In any situation, a conversation, a task, a quiet moment, take one breath and notice the awareness in which everything is happening. Don't analyze it, just feel it. The sounds, sensations, and thoughts are all arising together, effortlessly. In that single pause, you touch the living unity that underlies everything. Then move from that awareness into action. Speak, create, move, and respond, but do it with the understanding that you are part of a larger intelligence. The words you speak, the choices you make, the energy you share, they're all the universe flowing through a specific form called you. When you live like this, connection becomes not just a principle, but a way of being. Over time, this practice shifts your sense of identity. You stop identifying as a person trying to connect and start recognizing yourself as consciousness already connected. The anxiety of separation fades. The need to prove, to control, to resist all begin to dissolve. What replaces them is a quiet sense of belonging, a knowing that whatever happens is part of one continuous movement. And this doesn't make you detached or indifferent. In fact, it deepens your humanity. Because when you see yourself in everything, compassion becomes natural. The suffering of others feels personal, because it is. Their joy is your joy, their pain your pain, not metaphorically but experientially. That's the ultimate expression of entanglement, not as a physical phenomenon, but as a state of consciousness that recognizes itself everywhere. This is what it means to use entanglement correctly. Not as a tool for gaining power, but as a mirror that shows you the truth of unity. The conscious connection method isn't about learning new information. It's about remembering what you already are. The moment you stop seeing yourself as separate, the field opens, and life begins to move through you with intelligence and grace. As this realization stabilizes, something remarkable happens. You no longer feel like you're on a journey toward connection. You realize the journey itself was the field unfolding through you. The seeker and the sought were never different. Awareness was simply playing the game of forgetting and remembering itself. That's the essence of the conscious connection method. It's not a system, not a doctrine, and not even a practice in the usual sense. It's a shift in perception, from living as a separate mind to living as the field of consciousness itself. From thinking about unity to embodying it. And once you see that, the question changes from how do I connect to how do I live as connection. That's where science becomes art and awareness becomes action. Because when consciousness realizes it's entangled with everything, it doesn't just sit in stillness. It participates. It creates, it loves, it expresses. It becomes the quantum human, awake, aware, and inseparable from the fabric of existence. And that's where we'll go next, into the final chapter, where this realization becomes a way of life. When you begin to live from the understanding that consciousness and reality are one, something profound shifts in how you experience being human. The world no longer appears as a stage of separate actors, each fighting for survival. Instead, you begin to sense it as a single living organism, a unified field expressing itself through countless forms, including you. You realize that you are not standing in the universe. You are the universe aware of itself. That is the beginning of the quantum human. The quantum human doesn't live in theory. They don't need to convince themselves of connection. They feel it constantly. Every moment of life is seen as part of one continuous movement of consciousness. Every person, every sound, every breath is part of the same vibration. The old identity, the one built on separation and control, starts to dissolve. And in its place arises a new way of being that feels lighter, freer, and deeply intelligent. This isn't about escaping ordinary life. It's about transforming how you live within it. You still wake up, work, speak, and create, but everything happens in a different context. The context is wholeness. The sense of "I am doing this" slowly turns into "this is happening through me." You begin to live as an open channel for the field itself, not as a fragment trying to manage the field. In this state, everything becomes communication, not in words, but in resonance. You start to feel the subtle flow of energy that connects all things. You walk through a forest and sense the quiet intelligence in the trees. You interact with others and perceive the deeper consciousness behind their words. Even challenges stop feeling like enemies. They appear as part of the same unfolding intelligence, inviting response instead of resistance. That is the essence of living as part of the unified field. Participation without conflict. You're not trying to dominate reality, you're dancing with it. Each decision becomes less about fear or control and more about alignment. What feels right isn't just personal preference anymore. It's resonance with the greater harmony of the whole. The quantum human understands that cause and effect are not linear. They see life as a field of correlations, where intention, action, and outcome are intertwined in ways that logic can't fully capture. This doesn't mean abandoning logic, it means transcending it. The mind becomes a tool, not a prison. You use thought, but you are no longer trapped inside it. You feel the deeper intelligence that flows beneath thought, the same intelligence that guides galaxies, seasons, and the growth of every cell. From this awareness, life becomes both deeply peaceful and incredibly creative. You don't need to force ideas. They emerge effortlessly. You don't need to chase meaning. Meaning reveals itself in every moment. The universe is no longer a puzzle to solve. It's a conversation to listen to. And yet, living as the quantum human doesn't mean you stop feeling human emotions. You still experience joy, sadness, uncertainty, and love. But each emotion is seen as part of the same field, energy moving through awareness. You no longer identify with it as mine. You watch it, feel it fully, and let it dissolve. Suffering begins to lose its grip because the illusion of separateness, which feeds suffering, is gone. When you live this way, even time changes. The past and future lose their heaviness because you see that everything arises in the present, not as a linear timeline, but as a constant unfolding now. The quantum field doesn't move from past to future. It simply expresses itself in ever-changing patterns of the present. You start to live in that rhythm, fluid, responsive, awake. This awakening doesn't make you special. It makes you simple. You stop seeking extraordinary experiences and start recognizing the extraordinary within the ordinary. Washing a dish, walking down a street, speaking with a friend, all of it glows with the same awareness. Every act becomes sacred because it's all the same consciousness in motion. This is the true meaning of evolution, not technological, but perceptual. Humanity's next step isn't in building smarter machines. It's in remembering the intelligence that's already here. The quantum human represents that step, the return from fragmentation to wholeness. The realization that the observer, the observed, and the act of observing are one event, endlessly recreating itself. From that realization, compassion naturally expands. You see that harm to another is harm to yourself. You understand that healing, cooperation, and creativity aren't ideals. They're reflections of how the universe already functions. When humanity begins to live from that awareness, our systems, relationships, and technologies will shift automatically, because consciousness, once awakened to unity, can't build from division anymore. The conscious connection method leads here to the recognition that enlightenment isn't escape, and connection isn't something to achieve. Both are natural states revealed when the noise of separation fades. You don't become part of the unified field. You discover that you always were. In this way, the quantum human doesn't see the universe as an external reality to conquer, but as an internal field to align with. The boundary between self and cosmos disappears. You begin to understand that your every breath, every intention, every choice is a movement of the total field. You are the quantum field, localized, aware, and free, and once you live from that awareness, life changes from effort to expression. Creativity flows as naturally as breathing. Relationships become reflections of shared being. Even challenges become opportunities for deeper coherence with the whole. You stop reacting and start resonating. You don't try to use entanglement anymore. You live it, because to live as the quantum human is to embody what entanglement has always been pointing toward: unity without loss of individuality, diversity without division, multiplicity within oneness. You realize that the field doesn't eliminate form, it celebrates it. Every perspective, every being, every moment is the field experiencing itself in a unique way. And as that realization matures, gratitude naturally arises. Gratitude for existence, for awareness, for the mystery of being itself. You no longer need certainty, you trust the unfolding. The need to control turns into curiosity. The need to understand turns into awe. And the need to connect dissolves, because connection was never missing. That's the final truth of the conscious connection method. You don't use it to reach the field. You use it to remember you are the field. The journey isn't about going anywhere. It's about waking up to where you've always been, here now, within the infinite web of consciousness. So when you look back at the idea of using quantum entanglement, you can finally see the irony. We were never supposed to use it. We were supposed to see it as a mirror of who we are, not two particles influencing each other across space, but one consciousness appearing as two. Not distance, but depth. Not mystery to solve, but unity to live. This is what it means to live as the quantum human, awake within the unified field, aware that every action, every breath, every thought is part of the same eternal entanglement. The universe looking at itself through you, and once you know that, you don't just understand connection, you become it.